Well, here we go. It's the final weekend of the Six Nations. Ireland have a chance of silverware on Super Saturday, and we're all very excited about what lies ahead as Ireland face Scotland in the Aviva Stadium. Hello, and you're all very welcome to The Takeaway, sponsored by Chicago Town, sponsors of all our Six Nations coverage here on Balls.ie. My name is Maire Treasa, and I'm delighted to be joined, as always, by the lovely Gordon Darcy. Gordon, how are you? What are your plans for Paddy's weekend?
Oh, listen, it's a roller coaster weekend in this house. The kids have the penny has dropped that they've got 3 days off school, so it's a 5-day weekend. So they are they know there's a rugby match going on. The Wexford are playing Cork in the hurling on Sunday, and we have picked our movie nights. So the kids have picked all their pizzas. Lennon's gone for this cheesy tiger crust, and Soleil's gone for this deep pan. So we've rented Sing 2 for about the 7th or 8th time. So it's a wall-to-wall weekend for us.
Rugby and pizza, what a combination. You can't really go far too wrong with that. And we're also going to be joined this week by former Scotland scrum half Rory Lawson, who we'll chat to a bit later on. But first of all, Gordon, it was a record bonus point win for Ireland in Twickenham against England last weekend, but still there was a feeling of frustration and disappointment in some quarters at the performance. How do you feel after it all?
Well, actually, I've actually watched this game back a couple of times because really just trying to understand what happens, and Rory, be great to get his intake on this as well. Like, you've playing games where like the plan just goes out the window and you've no control really over what the opposition do. What I was really impressed with was, and I'm sure this is the players would feel like this inside, is that they still got the bonus point and they still won. It took to 72 minutes to score another try, but that's absolutely fine. Sometimes you have to be patient. Like, the worst thing is that they started throwing Hail Marys or going really off the away from the game plan, like really pushing passes, because that would have actually brought England back into the game and could have lost it for them, because the way the scrum was being reffed and the way the scrum was being rewarded, it was England's foothold into the game. So listen, red card, Ireland scored a try. It looked like it was going to be plain sailing, and then England just came back in, and they were getting, they were really being able to target Tadhg Furlong in the scrum, and they were getting penalties, so they were getting territory possession and points off it. So Ireland really had to manage that, and they did. And like I said, it took 72 minutes, and then it just blew the gasket from England, and they had no way to go from it. So from an Irish perspective, I think it was very composed in that they knew what the challenge was. They had to win. The bonus point was on offer, and they were patient enough to wait and to find it. And like, we have to give England massive credit. They showed character that has not been on display for quite a while.
And how significant is this win in Twickenham in this team's development? Would you regard it as a landmark victory?
No, when you 82 seconds, you get a red card, it will, there's a big asterisk in beside that. What is interesting is we have to decide in a game, are we getting rid of headshots or are we not getting rid of headshots? Because on one hand, we're sending Charlie Ewels off after 82 seconds, but then we're giving him a 3-match ban. Is that really going to get him to change his tackle technique? 3 matches, not that big a deal. James Ryan, we don't know how long this is going to impact him. So I think we really have to figure out what we are doing here when it comes to headshots. And I think the sanctions are going to have to increase until players start to change their behaviours. This is unfortunately another wasted match for Ireland in that development piece, because we had the Italian game, red card, front row comes off. Now we have the English game, so we didn't actually get to have to play. I think what it did show was that our set piece is very, very important, and we're going to have to become much more nimble or agile at how we deliver our set piece. So the line out, France have shown that they've gone after us. England in parts tried to go after us at the line out, but they particularly went after us in the scrum. So we need our set piece to be functioning, and I think that'll be a big focus for when we finish this tournament.
Yeah, Ireland's bench, I suppose, was one of the main positives from the game last weekend. He had 4 lines ready to come in and they made an impact. Are you surprised that Farrell hasn't gone for more changes this weekend?
No, like, and this is the hard thing with being a coach, isn't it? It's rewarding. It's finding that balance between rewarding form, rewarding consistency, and rewarding players off the bench. And you're right. Ian Henderson comes into the starting team. It's largely is picked off him. I don't think Bundy did anything wrong in the English game, and was a good sense, a good go forward for us. And Robbie Henshaw has done very well as an impact player coming off the bench. So I think sometimes you can be overcritical or over analyzing things, and if it ain't broken, don't fix it. I think has been the motto, has been the kind of mainstay for this selection and for this tournament.
Well, Ireland can, of course, secure a triple crown by beating Scotland in the Aviva Stadium this weekend. And we'll then have to watch on and see if the English can do us a favour over in Paris. So I'd like to welcome Rory Lawson here now. Rory, you're very welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, MT.
So, Rory, how important was the Six Nations for you as a player?
Oh, it was big for me as a player, as it is for any player who's involved in the championship. It's one of the most historic championships, and it is the most historic championship in world rugby, and to be a part of it's massive. I think Scotland are in a very different place when it comes to this squad now, the quality, the depth, the quality of coaching, the expectation versus my day. I think it's easy to kind of summarize my career in the Six Nations with Scotland as we didn't have that many good days, but we had a few great days. And it's that really was summarized. We were your stereotypical Scotland team that would lose some games you should have won, and then won the odd game against England, and everything's forgiven. And that was pretty much it. But I've got some great memories of it, but also some proper tough lessons learned. I was probably involved in a couple of games whereby we came off on the wrong end of the result against Italy. And I'm pleased that it's been a while since that's been the case, but I guess at the same time we were playing against an Italian side that had your Castro Giovanni's and your Sergio Parises and guys who were probably deemed as up there with the best in the world at the time. But those days are fairly long gone now, and now I'm just kind of the Scotland fan who gets to talk about the team now and go through the same roller coaster that every Scotland fan has done for the past 1,000 years.
Even though you're not in reckoning for a trophy this weekend, is there still excitement about final weekend?
Well, that's a really good question, actually, MT. I think this weekend actually becomes a big weekend for Scotland. I think it's bigger than just the Six Nations as well. And it's probably not something that Irish fans have thought all that much about. But, Scotland, I certainly still hurt from that Scotland performance at the Rugby World Cup in Japan, 3 years ago now. And we've not had a whole lot of success against Ireland since. And whilst the championship is beyond us, there's always the desire to finish as high up the table as you can. And for Scotland, they're in this kind of middle ground at the moment whereby an away win would be it would be Gregor Townsend's best victory as a Scotland coach against the quality of this Irish side in Dublin, who are still fighting for the championship honours. But at the same time, I think with regards to trying to set the tone and make a statement as to Scotland not being the side that they were away in Cardiff and beaten up at home to a very good French side, it needs a big performance, this Scotland side, to leave the championship with the credit that they came into the championship with.
Well, we all know what happened against Scotland in 2010, Gordon. They came to Croke Park and denied Ireland the Triple Crown. You were playing that day. Do those scars still linger on?
Listen, massively. You jumped in there just before me. I was checking the teams just to make sure were you playing, but it was Chris and Blair that were playing that day. But like Parksy just sat back in the corner in the pocket and just pinged the corners. And I think we got over the try line 3 times and either dropped the ball, or it was just one of those chaotic days where everything fell Scotland's way. And then when the momentum was gone, we couldn't wrestle it back. like it's, you know, you kind of, it's almost that schizophrenic approach from Scotland at the moment in the Six Nations. You don't know which one is going to come. That consummate performance they did delivered against England versus, you know, kind of the alter ego then against Wales. But I wonder with that, which Scotland do you expect to show up to this weekend with Kinghorn in at 10 instead of Finn Russell? Because there's always an unknown quantity with Russell. He could be, you know, majestic, or he could be the reason you lose the game. Are they looking for more consistency, or what do you think is the thought process behind the change of 10?
It's been a really strange championship, Darce. You know, I think for me, the win against England kind of papered over some cracks. It was Scotland were really clinical, having lost the possession and territory stakes in that game. England would have gone away, ruining a missed opportunity to win the Calcutta Cup back and start the championship with a win. Scotland did enough. They were clinical on the few occasions that they got into England's 22, came away with points, made them count. Against Wales, they had more territory and more possession, but actually were really wasteful with it, and therefore came out on the wrong end of the result. France, they got beaten up. And you know, in Italy, they were okay at times. They were good at times, but Scotland have not yet clicked, even for 60 minutes for me in this championship. They really do need to try and put together an 80-minute performance, and I think they've struggled a bit to really find the rhythm in attack, and I think that's possibly why what Gregor Townsend's gone looking for with Blair Kinghorn, who's been in dazzling form for Edinburgh. It is a new position that people are seeing Blair Kinghorn in, who don't necessarily know Blair Kinghorn's quality. As soon as Mike Blair took over at Edinburgh this season, he said to Blair Kinghorn, "I'm looking at you as a 10. I want you to be the fulcrum of our side." He's a big physical presence. He's 6'4", 6'5". He's got a really quick top end speed, but he is also deceptively quick, accelerating off the mark. His kicking game doesn't have the same variety and depth as Finn Russell's does, but he has a good kicking game. And I guess the pressure will come on when it comes to kicking goals, because I assume he will take over the goal kicking unless Stuart Hogg takes on those responsibilities. But I kind of feel it's a little bit of a hiding to nothing for Blair Kinghorn. You know, our attack's not gone great for a few games. In you go, find the answers against a really, really solid Irish side. Having said that, he's a real threat. He's a proper threat. He's a decent distributor. Not quite the same variety of passes and box of tricks as Finn Russell has with his passing skills as well, but I think the presence from him, and potentially it may be that Gregor Townsend's looked at him a little bit, understanding the kicking battle that will happen. And as you know well, Darce, 10s often get caught in the back, find position in the backfield during that, and maybe he's put him there because he's a great counter attacker. And I think for Scotland to win on Saturday, they need to really dominate possession and look after ball and attack from counter attack when the opportunities arise, because Ireland have a great kicking game. On the occasional loose one, Scotland have to have the ability to capitalise, and maybe that's just where Blair Kinghorn has that X factor.
Have you seen enough, or have you seen any evidence that Scotland are progressing or moving in the right direction when it comes to the attack?
I'm seeing Scotland with the capabilities to attack in different ways. I think, if I go 10 plus years ago when I was playing for Scotland, we had Frank Hadden, who was wide. We didn't have the physicality, so therefore we had to play around teams and try and run them around and keep them on their feet. And let's not get away from the fact that there have been significant law changes since that teams now build their game plans around. And then Andy Robinson kind of said, right, we're going to play two-phase attack and then play what you see, but lost sight of the fact that when you've got 15 players on the pitch, you could end up with 15 different opinions as to what they see. So we lacked the structure that we needed in that scenario. I think what Gregor Townsend has now is, and it was highlighted, I suppose, by the number of Lions who went to South Africa in the summer. He has some really high quality operators right through the team. The spine of the team are good. I think if you look at George Turner at hooker is an absolute powerhouse. And he needs to have a massive game on Saturday for Scotland to be competitive at set piece and around the field. Xander Ferguson, tight head prop, British and Irish line. Johnny Gray comes back in, who is an absolute workhorse, and will put in a massive shift alongside Grant Gilchrist, who is the line-out caller and the best defensive line-out man. In the back row, you've obviously got Hamish Watson, another British and Irish lion, and then Rory Darge, who for me has had Scotland's individual performance of the championship so far against France. And then you've got Ali Price, line starting test, scrum half. Obviously, Blair Kinghorn comes in as a bit of a wild card in there, and your Chris Harris, Stuart Hogg, Darcy Graham. You've got some quality, and you've got a sort of variety in how Scotland attack, whether it's through maul and around the fringes, or getting into these wide channels whereby you can get Darcy Graham onto the ball, who's been absolutely outstanding in this championship so far. And there are a few guys in there who are really due a massive game and won't want to sign off this championship without anything but a huge performance. So I think it's a very, very long-winded way of answering your question, MT, so apologies for that. But what I'm saying is that Scotland have a bigger box of tricks. I think the key thing is that they've got to be 20% more accurate, because both against Wales, against Italy, against France, they lost too much first phase ball, or within 2 or 3 phases, the accuracy wasn't there to cause the opposition defence's problems. And that's only one side of the ball as well. I think the discipline, particularly away from home, has to be absolutely bang on to have any chance of competing against the men in green.
Rory, that's what I wonder, is that's why they brought in Kinghorn, because you're right. So you got Ali Price, who's live wire, you got Sam Johnson, who's a good ball distributor, you got Chris, and Stuart Hogg. I wonder, having that more consistent type of not consistent, much more level head at 10, will that allow them to shine, or is that maybe the thinking behind it, that Hogg can now come in as a second first receiver, that second playmaker? These guys will he'll become more of a facilitator rather than when Russell plays, everything goes through him.
Yeah, Darcy, I'll have to get a soundbite of that and send it on to Blair Kinghorn, suggesting he's level-headed. No, I think...
well, more consistent anyway.
Yeah, well, look, I think that it's a big, big ask for Blair this Saturday. But I do think that certainly the French game, and in a lot of these match weeks, when it comes to the attack, Gregor Townsend will empower Finn Russell to say, this is how we're going to attack. And he's a big analyst of games. He looks at opponents a lot in preparation for games, and he picks even just the slightest little chink in the armory that he sees. The potential shift is that you might find that it's the Kinghorn, Johnson, Hogg combination now that are talking about how they're going to attack, rather than it being, right, Finn, how are we attacking? Everyone understand what Finn's going to do, and then we'll just all react to that. So I'm not altogether sure. I've not spoken to any of the guys this week, but it will be a slightly different dynamic. I still think that Blair Kinghorn has to take responsibility and step up and run the show and have real confidence. The opening 5 to 10 minutes are really important for Blair Kinghorn to just try and settle into the game, get some early touches and high quality early touches, even if it is just, getting Sam Johnson up over the gain line, or Chris Harris, or getting into the hands of Stuart Hogg as second receiver. But he's a high quality operator, Blair Kinghorn. Mike Blair backs him massively. Gregor Townsend is backing him on Saturday. And I suppose one of the things that you take into account is that so much analysis is done on opponents now, and there is less footage that is going to be available of Blair Kinghorn. So potentially Ireland won't know quite as much as they might have done against Finn Russell.
Well, we're here with thanks to Chicago Town, sponsors of all our Six Nations coverage here on Balls.ie. And it's time for me to remind you that you still have a chance to win a jersey and some precious Chicago Town vouchers. All you have to do is head over to the Chicago Town Instagram page and the Balls.ie Instagram page to be in with the chance to win. Rory, would you say you're more of a cheese and tomato man or a meat feast kind of pizza guy?
Pile it up, pile the meat on, and pile it as high as you like. That is me all day long.
And Paddy's weekend, of course, pizza and rugby. It's the ideal time to have it. Now, the last time that Ireland won silverware on home soil, Gordon, was in 2004. You scored 2 tries that day. How special was that for you? And what are your memories of that Triple Crown win?
Oh God, yeah. That's going back in a while. I think they just started making recordings in color back around then. I remember the gloves. Rory, do you remember them? The period where everyone wore the cut off gloves.
Yeah.
You know, it was on trend. That was a really really great time in Irish. I think we had a really good group of players, and Eddie O'Sullivan, obviously the coach at the time, and we had a very, very simple approach, and we just, we won in Twickenham and we won the Triple Crown there, and a good performance in Paris against the French, and really started the kick on for that golden generation, and the success that would come over the next kind of 10, 12, 13 years. But I think it's like, you're playing with Scotland. It's that it's I suppose they've gone through so many different identities over the year. Rory's talking about the different coaches. And I think that was around the time they were starting to brace that wide to wide pattern, which is very frustrating to defend because you have to do an awful lot of cover defense getting through it. But for me, that day was my first Six Nations. Well, it was actually a pretty enjoyable tournament because I've been professional for 6 years at this stage and hadn't played in a 5 or 6 Nations. So getting in and getting some tries was pretty enjoyable. And like my first tournament, getting some silverware was even better.
And how important or how special would it be for this group of players to get the Triple Crown?
Yeah, like the only thing they can do is win the game, and like the match afterwards, we've been in that situation before. 2007, just before the World Cup, we went out to Italy and played a game, had a really good game. It was a bit, loose, and we coughed up a try to Italy in the last few minutes, and that cost us the championship, which was really weird when we were all sitting down in the hotel in Italy, and we watched Scotland play France, and it was so close, and we were just sitting there going, oh my God. Yeah. If we had just been a little bit more clinical in the last 3 minutes, we would have won a championship. That was equally as hard to watch, but it just shows the margins that are so small. So I think for this Irish team, there's definitely a ruthless edge in them, and that mentality that they're bringing to the games. You saw the way they approached the game in France, and they were able to come back. Even though France got off to a belter of a start, they were able to come back and could easily have won that game. And the way they managed a very, very passionate England in Twickenham. So I'd expect a very ruthless display from these guys. And the bare minimum is beating Scotland by whatever the day dictates that to be. And they come away from that and they just go, if things fall our way in Paris, great. But if not, they played a good tournament, gotten silverware, and it's a good springboard for say going to New Zealand.
I have to apologize for that score deficit in 2007. Actually, dare I say it was my first start for Scotland, and it came in the Six Nations in Paris. And having said that, we scored first, which is always dangerous when you go to Paris as a Scots, because it raises further the hopes. And actually, I was cut. I remember vividly, and I've still got the scars in my deep tissue in my lower back. Julien Benaire, the blindside flanker for France that day, just before half time, I box kicked, probably could have counted to 5 or 6, and then he cut me in half 2 minutes before half time. And I went into the change room at half time, didn't return to the field, and I had to watch on as France continued to pile the pressure on and extend the points difference to a level whereby they won the championship. So apologies to all Irish listeners.
So it's you we have to blame.
Well, I don't think the deficit was as bad when I was on field. I'll take responsibility to a point.
You were winning when
France are within
exactly.
touching distance of winning the title, of course, and the Grand Slam since 2010. On the back of what we've seen from them, and I suppose if we look back at England's performance last weekend, Rory, how likely is it that the English will cause an upset in Paris and do us a favour?
Well, the one thing I would say is that if this was another round of the championship, I might say, France all day long, France by at least a score, and that Ireland are going to be hoping for something like what happened at Twickenham last weekend, an early red card or something to shift the balance a little bit. Having said that, I'm having spoken to a couple of French pals, the expectation now on this French side, a home 5th round championship match with the Grand Slam on the line for the first time in a long time, that comes with massive pressure. And whilst this French side have taken on every challenge that's been thrown their way so far, or certainly in the past 12 or 18 months, now is the time whereby they're properly under the spotlight. And this is it. For this group of players, this is their biggest game. And England were defiant, even in defeat with 14 men last weekend. I think they'll have found an extra couple of % of belief within the squad. It will take a huge performance from England, and I still expect France to win. But for as long as that pressure and that, the highlight of a Grand Slam lingers over this French side, you just wonder how they're going to cope with the pressure. And again, early stages of the game will dictate a lot. I know when Scotland started playing against France, there were 2 minutes either side of half time, which for me were the game. Scotland were within a fingernail of scoring with Stuart Hogg 2 minutes before half time. France went up the other end 2 minutes later, scored the last play of the half, and then compounded it with another score straight after half time. My feeling was, had Scotland gone in at half time ahead, suddenly the conversations are really different, and you just don't know how composed this French team can be when the scoreboard goes against them. So there is always hope. This is a high quality England side, albeit the results haven't gone their way, and pressure does some amazing things to people.
Yeah, that's it, Gordon. There's pressure on the French. There's pressure on Eddie Jones and on the English as well. So how do you see it play out?
Yeah, it's funny. The French have become way more conservative as the games have come on, and the championship has come into focus. And the Ntamack dancing in the 22, almost carefree against the All Blacks in November, seems like a distant memory. So they have definitely tightened up, and I think Dupont didn't play particularly well last week. So it's really funny, but they are at home. There's a weight of expectation. I think what's been really funny from the French is they haven't been able to deliver an 80-minute performance in the Six Nations. And they tired badly against Ireland for the last 20 minutes. And one of the things we know about England is if they have 15 players on the field, they're not going to tire. So it's going to be a very, very attritional game. I think the game breakers are going to be the difference. So you still just get the overriding feel that France will do enough, but I don't think enough is what they want. They really want to win this World Cup in 15, 16 months. So if they just do enough and get the championship, the history books will be very, very kind to that. But a performance against England is very, very important for the bigger project that they're kind of running in tandem with this. So if they can, wear that pressure and deliver a performance that beats England, with underpinned by a performance, then I think everybody in World Rugby will probably sit up and take note. If it's a scramble over the line and just enough to get the tournament, I think that this is showing what their inherent weakness is, and that would be that ability to deal with real pressure.
And looking ahead to our game before we finish up, Scotland have nothing to lose, Rory, which is a dangerous prospect for us. How are you looking to beat Ireland? Where will you target us? Will it be a physicality or a physical game like Eddie Jones showed last weekend in the set piece, or where are our weaknesses?
Oh, look, I think all teams have weaknesses or can have bad days. I think for Scotland, it'll be a really interesting tactical approach that they take. I think they will kick more. I think they'll try and get into a kick battle and then eventually try and create some counter-attacking opportunities, either through the likes of Darcy Graham, Blair Kinghorn, Stuart Hogg. But I think if Scotland try to play too much, certainly from inside their own half, this is too high quality an Irish defensive side. The battle of breakdown will be massive. But I think Scotland have to stay patient in the kick battle, and then when the opportunities come in the Irish half, they've got to play fast. They've got to get the ball up and away from the ruck into Blair Kinghorn's hands or round the fringes. You need big games from the likes of Hamish Watson and Rory Darge and Matt Fagerson, the back rowers on the carry. You'll get the industry from Gilchrist and Johnny Gray, Xander Fagerson, George Turner. You'll get a lot of work in there, but they've got to take their opportunities. You can't go to Dublin and leave opportunities out there and expect to win the test match. So as Scotland are big underdogs, which is probably where they like to be in this game, but they'll be driven by a bit of fear that if they don't get things right, you know, this Irish side can really put you to the sword the way that they showed against Wales in round one.
Yeah, as we said, Gordon, Ireland haven't won a Triple Crown at home in 18 years. Will it happen this weekend? And are you worried about the threats that Scotland might bring?
With the utmost respect to the Scotland team that's coming, it's not the best version of itself, and that's an unknown quantity, and you never know what that might bring. I don't see this Irish team falling prey to that. The way they're playing, it's kind of independent of who the opposition is. They look to stamp their game on the match. So unless Scotland are able to disrupt the primary possession, so are they able to get in the scrum the way England were? Are they able to disrupt it in the same fashion the French were? If they're not able to do that, and Ireland are able to get their primary possession playable, win it, and it's playable ball, I would expect Ireland to deliver a fairly similar performances as they have done in the championship. So I would expect Ireland to be able to cut loose.
Yeah, Darce, my memories, my abiding memories over the past 5 years or so, and particularly that Rugby World Cup game, was Ireland just go to Scotland and say, right, can you stand with us toe to toe? We are going to come at you with our heavy artillery, physicality. We're coming around the corner. When we get into the 22, we're going to pick and go. We're going to get one out hit, and the dam is eventually going to break. And I don't see it being enormously different to that. I remember Johnny Sexton scoring a try whereby loads of work was done on the inside, and Scotland had to overcommit, and then they moved the ball to the space. Johnny Sexton with an easy run in. And I think this is where Ireland now, and the shape that they're playing with under Andy Farrell, is just the next level. There are times whereby if you put them in black jerseys, you would be saying, they're every bit as good as the All Blacks with regards to their movement game, the danger runners that they have. So just like Dar says, the physical battle, stopping it at source, has to be the starting point. And I think Scotland have to be incredibly bold to do that. You've got to get two men up in the air challenging at line-out time and almost, throw out the window the danger of them all and try and say, right, if you don't win the ball, you can't create them all. So they're going to have to be bold and brave to be able to cause Ireland problems.
Yeah, because in the last few games, Ireland are playing off this. They're getting 60% plus rucks with less than 3 second ball. So simply for our viewers at home, is that if you're playing off less than 3 second ruck, the attack is unlikely to be set. So the defence is almost definitely not going to be set. So Gibson Park is the main tempo driver for Ireland. So that's why the primary possession is so important. If you get over the gain on that first ruck, Gibson Park is there and the ball is moved away. A little bit like yourself, Rory, in your prime, almost there before the ball is waiting for it to be moved. Yeah. But once you're moving that ball away from the breakdown so quickly, the Irish attack isn't set. So Caelan Doris is running onto the ball tight. It's just jouet, as the French would say, but they're over the gain line and it's gone. So if Scotland don't stop that at source, they're going to be chasing shadows. And Gibson Park is a brilliant. Now I know people have looked at a few passes gone awry, but when you're playing at that tempo quickly, you've got to move the ball and you force players to be ready, and that's a huge principle for the Irish attack.
Well, we're all very optimistic, but wary about the threats that the Scots might bring, because Scotland will be ready to ruin the party, of course. My thanks to Rory and to Gordon for joining me today. And my thanks to you at home for joining us on the takeaway over the course of the Six Nations, which was, of course, brought to you in partnership with Chicago Town Pizza. Be sure to get your pizza before kickoff this weekend. Agus Ada Abu. Slán go fóill.